Always a great visit to Don's Seafood, 4801 Veterans Memorial Boulevard in Metairie. Soft shell crabs, dressed, steaks, seafood, you name it, you'll get it at Don's. Oh, the charbroiled oysters, awesome at Don's Seafood. Over 80 years of great service, not only here in Metairie, but throughout the state at Don's Seafood, a Louisiana tradition and now a Metairie tradition. And a pleasant good evening to you. Ken Trahan with sportsNOLAtv from Don's Seafood in Metairie. So glad that you could join us following a huge night in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome where the New Orleans Saints crushed the Carolina Panthers to take first place in the South Division of the NFC. Joining us to break that game down among all other games, college, high school, and more, our regulars, including former New Orleans Saints and NFL wide receiver Torrance Small. Merry Christmas, Torrance.
Christmas, you have your red on and you're ready for Christmas as well. We're all ready for Christmas and all. But man, what a rebound that the Saints came back. I love the rebound. Hey, hopefully our Pelicans can take a lesson from the Saints.
The other gentleman who got the dress code here today, got the memo, Brian Ellie Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. He's in the Christmas spirit as well. Santa, how are you?
Beard and all.
Dr. Trahan, it's always a pleasure to be on this panel. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody.
Happy New Year, too, while we're at it.
Happy New Year.
Anything else we can come up with, it's all good. And, of course, the gentleman who didn't get the memo, he's got to stand apart, per usual. It's kind of like the Advent wreath, you know what I mean? The Hall of Famer himself, Ricky Jackson. Ricky.
I tell you what, man, it's great always to be here. The holidays coming up, man. I hope everybody have a great holiday, but I didn't get the memo.
Hall of Famer, you don't need the memo. The name speaks for itself.
You know, I got my company on back to work. You know,
Back to work.
Right. We got a staffing company now. You know, putting people back to work. So you know, I have to wear my shirt sometimes.
Well,
I hear you.
Deck the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
When are you going to have a moving billboard on your shirt? Is that coming next week or what?
That's coming next week.
I figured as much. I figured as much. Everybody's smiling up here because it's been a great week. The New Orleans Saints with a big win. Bowl games, Louisiana colleges doing extremely well, state championships in high school football, you name it. We've got it. When we come back, Saints highlights on WHNO Channel 20. This is a quarterback who still doesn't get his due in some circles around this country. We've heard him called a system quarterback, a dome quarterback, not a strong arm, all of these things. Perish the thought. He's the real deal. He's a great quarterback. He's a future Hall of Famer like Ricky Jackson, and he's a New Orleans Saint. He's not going anywhere for quite some time. He's Drew Brees. 183 games to get to 50,000 yards, only the fifth person to do so, and the fastest anyone has ever gotten there. Brian, we should appreciate this guy, and we do, but we should appreciate him even more while we can, because this is something special we're watching.
I agree totally with you, Kenny. There's only a few athletes that we are in a good position, to cover. And I'm not saying this because he's on the dais, and Torrance Small is a really good player and a great human being. This guy is a Hall of Fame player, and you do feel fortunate to cover people like Ricky and Drew Brees because they don't come around very often.
They really don't, Torrance. And again, special player, makes everybody around him better, and he spreads the wealth on a regular basis.
And he does. He makes everybody better. He throws guys open. Jimmy Graham, he helped develop this guy. He helped develop Colston. All these were young guys when they came here, and they got with him, and he helped develop these guys. I saw on his show, they asked the question, who would you like as a quarterback right now? They had Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and Kaepernick, and Drew Brees. Disrespect. That is totally disrespect to even have him with those guys, or rather yet have those guys mentioned with him. I thought it was a total disrespect question to ask on a sports show.
Well, it's a flavor of the day, you know what I mean? Russell Wilson's a terrific young player. I love that guy, and he's he's going to continue to become a great player. He's not yet. He's only in his second year in the league. Ricky, how special is Drew Brees in your eyes?
Well, I mean, you know, he's an icon to the city, to the NFL, and I mean, the things that he just brings to the table. I mean, you know, you're saying that he don't get what he deserves. I think that Drew get what he deserves, and I think he get, you know, he deserves everything that he get. You can see that he on all the commercials. I mean, I see him every night on TV on commercials. I mean, he's one of the highest paid players in the NFL, so everybody recognizes Drew as one of the best, and I think they take care of him as one of the best. And he's one of the best young men that I've seen, you know, in football.
Well, let's take a look at some final numbers from the Saints' victory over Carolina. And as you review these numbers, they are totally revealing from the standpoint of who won the game and by a large margin. And why, Brian? As you look at those numbers, obviously the yards per play, the total yards, the passing yards, the sacks, third down conversions, a big deal. This was a totally dominating performance by the Saints.
Kenny, I think you brought up a good point in the rehash of the game. That third down completion of Colston was huge because that got them going. They were, you know, it was a sluggish start in the first quarter, but that got them going. 3 touchdowns. The Panthers had not allowed more than 2 in any game this season. And, you know, you just can't say enough good things about when this offense is clicking on all cylinders.
Torrance, Panthers had a drive to start the game. Long drive, kicked a field goal. Saints go 3 and out. Panthers get it back. They take a 6-0 lead. And then the Saints needed to make a play because their defense would have been worn out early. That play to Colston changes things. And then the 38-yard run by Sproles really got them over the hump. And from that point on, they were simply a much better team.
Yes, once we got our rhythm, we got going, we took over the game. The key to the game, and I know we've been talking about offensively and defensively, key to the game, we know defensively that it was Cam Jordan and Junior Gillette. Those guys rushed the passer. They got 5 sacks in the game between the 2 of them. But the offensive line, we haven't talked about the offensive line. The offensive line did a great job. Drew Brees was not on his back. He wasn't under distress. He had time to throw the ball. He found the right receivers. We made catches. We did everything we were supposed to have done in that game. Now, we didn't run the ball effective, but that is not us. That is not us. Passing the ball, being efficient, that is us. 7-12 on third down, that is big. We just had a great game, and I like to give a shout out to the offensive line for what they done.
Ricky, it was very important that the Saints got pressure with just 4 rushers most of the game, enabled them to play coverage.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they kept the quarterback in the pocket, you know what I mean? And a couple times he got out, you know, you can see that he can run the ball. But those 4 guys up front, they maintained what they supposed to do. They gave the secondary a chance and the linebackers that play the game the way they normally play the game. But I tell you what, man, we had such a great game plan for him. Coach made I think he out-coached Carolina yesterday, and that was the key to the whole thing. They weren't ready for the stuff that we was doing, and I really look at the game as we played Seattle. We really didn't really play Seattle. We was more waiting on Carolina. You can see the whole difference. We came out to Carolina to fight these guys. Last week, we kind of took the week off.
Brian, as I mentioned earlier, best quarter I've seen the Saints play in a long, long time. 187 yards, 3 touchdowns, all 3 possessions, and they allowed just 35 yards to the Panthers.
Yeah, by comparison, they were only got 188 in the entire game against Seattle. Ricky, I agree with you totally. I think the difference in Seattle and Carolina are 2 things. The back end of Carolina's defense isn't anything like Seattle, and I thought the Saints' defensive line took it to Carolina's offensive line. They dominated.
Yeah, they dominated.
Yeah, they did. Let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming schedules for both the Saints and the Carolina Panthers because it's a 1-game spread, 3 games left. All right, the Saints go to St. Louis this week, then they get the rematch in Charlotte, and then at home against Tampa Bay. The Panthers have the Jets, who won a game, but they're not very good. Then the Saints are, of course, at Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta plays spoiler. Bottom line here, Torrance, you win 2 of those games, you're the division champion, and you're the 2nd seed overall.
Yes, and that's going to be important. As you can see, we're a totally different team when we play in the Dome. Totally different team. And we want to get as many home games as we can in the playoffs.
I'll tell you what, man, you know, you can look at the Jets, and you don't know what Jet team going to show up. Just like they showed up against the Saints, they showed up yesterday. They can go in and beat Carolina. So, you know what I mean, don't take the Jets lightly. I mean, because of what Jet team show up, they can win the ball.
Ryan, here's the equation. Win the next 2, including at Charlotte. Then you can rest players in that final game and basically have 2 weeks off for your veteran players.
Absolutely. And You know what? That was such a huge win for a lot of reasons last night, but that puts him in the catbird seat. This is now their division, and they're going to win it. I don't think any of us really didn't think that they wouldn't, but they just need to get back and continue to play good football as they get ready for the playoffs.
I'll tell you what, man, they got a lot of young players over there, man, who hungry, and that's what I like about it.
When we return in just a moment, we'll take a trip around the NFL as Sports NOLA TV continues from Don Seafood in Metairie on WHNO Channel 20. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening is a good one. Do you think you know the answer? Sunday night's win marked the second time in franchise history the Saints have ended an opponent's 8-game winning streak at home. Who was the other team to come to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome with an 8-game winning streak and leave with a loss? Think about it, ponder it, beat your brain. We'll have the answer for you a little bit later in the show, and we'll see just how smart you are, because Brian's not very smart. Just ask Ricky. Sports NOLA TV continues for Don Seafood in Metairie. Ken Trahan with you, and the NFL season is winding down, folks. We're getting a clearer picture. Not totally clear, still partly cloudy in weather terminology, but getting closer to determining champions, seeds, buys, and such. Let's take a look at NFL results from week number 12 in the NFL, and the Thursday night special. Jacksonville playing better late in the season, and that got Gary Kubiak fired as head coach of the Texans. Also, a thriller with Baltimore pulling out one over Minnesota. Big win for the Ravens there. Cincinnati, don't sleep on the Bengals in the AFC. They are the sleeper team. Green Bay, Matt Flynn, a pretty solid game, got by Atlanta. That was the game they flexed out for the Saints game, by the way. New England just pulled one out of a hat to beat Cleveland by 1. It was the Jets bouncing back to beat Oakland. Philadelphia in the snowstorm over Detroit. Miami in a wild one over Pittsburgh. Could have gone the other way were it not for an inch or two at the end of the game on a pitch play. Elsewhere, Tampa Bay playing good football of late. Washington's horrible. Kansas City broke their losing streak. Denver hung 51 on Tennessee. Peyton Manning, you want to stay with that narrative? I'll tell you what to do with it. Arizona beat St. Louis by 20. The Saints' next opponent, San Diego, crushed the Giants. Eli had to go to San Diego. Sorry, he did. And San Francisco beat Seattle by 2. Dallas and Chicago in freezing, beyond freezing temperatures coming up on Monday Night Football. So as we look at those results, Brian, what gets your fancy?
Kenny, it was one of the best weekends in the NFL this season, but I've got to go to that Baltimore-Minnesota game. 5 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes and 7 seconds. In the snow, it was just outstanding. That game caught me by the...
George?
Oh, Philadelphia. Philadelphia and the Lions. Lions fighting to try to keep the lead in their division, and they just, for some reason, cannot just get over the hump. And Chicago has an opportunity to come back and win and have an opportunity to fight for a playoff spot, as well as Green Bay still have an opportunity to fight for a playoff spot in that division. But Philadelphia is playing great ball. They're in first place right now, half a game against over Dallas, and we'll see what Dallas is going to do tonight.
Rick?
I'll tell you what, I like Cincinnati, man. You know what I mean? They fighting hard over there in that division. Ain't much the Dolphins. I mean, every time those teams on the bubble or trying to hang in there, you know, you like those teams to get a win because they still got life in them.
And I'm with you. Cincinnati really got my attention more than any other team yesterday because everyone points to Denver and New England in the AFC, and understandably so. But Cincinnati has a legitimate chance to win the AFC. I think they're better than New England. It's all about Andy Dalton and how he plays. If he plays good, they're a really good team. If he plays better than good, they might be the best team in that conference. If he plays average, they're very beatable. I think ultimately it's down to those 3 teams, but Cincinnati clearly is a football team that has a chance to win the AFC. I think they're one of 3 teams that really does have a shot. With that, let's take a look at the standings as we speak, and obviously as we look at the playoff picture, we see Seattle by a game over the Saints, which is essentially 2 games because of the head-to-head win by the Seahawks. Philadelphia, division leader. Dallas has a chance to match them tonight. Detroit, a division leader. They can't get out of their own way, and they're still there. The wild cards are 2 pretty strong football teams, Carolina and the 49ers. Arizona, Dallas, the most notables, still in the hunt. Chicago's still there, and Green Bay, by virtue of that win over Atlanta, still in the hunt as well. As you look at that playoff picture, Brian, if you're looking at those teams on the second tier, the wild card teams and the ones still in contention, which teams do you think are going to emerge as wild card teams?
Well, I think the 2 existing ones are going to stay where they are. I think Green Bay is going to get Aaron Rodgers back and maybe make that last push. I don't see them overtaking Detroit really in the North. But you know what? We saw those 2 games yesterday, Frisco and Seattle. New Orleans at home against Carolina. To me, it just shows the difference. You get Seattle out of its element, and you put New Orleans back in its element.
Yes.
And you got a different ball game.
Yes, totally different. Hey, I like Arizona. Arizona's playing some good ball. 49ers, if you slack up at any point, I think Arizona can overtake them. They're playing great ball right now. I look for some surprises, and I think Arizona might sneak in there.
I tell you what, man, I can't talk about Peyton Manning, call my man here. But I tell you, Detroit, I know they wish they'd have played the game yesterday on the dry field. They feel like they'd have a better chance than they did yesterday.
Too many turnovers. Too many turnovers in that game.
Right.
Well, Shady McCoy was amazing.
Yes.
I mean, how good was he? What an incredible performance by Shady McCoy. I mean, you talk about speed, you talk about balance, he's got it. And Philadelphia is a pretty dangerous team because of their offense. I'm just not sure about their defense being good enough to break through against the big 4 that Brian alluded to. But of all the other teams that might have a chance, Philadelphia and maybe Arizona, Brian, would have the teams to look for.
I agree with you guys. I mean, Arizona, there's just something about Arizona. I think Carson Palmer's got to play just lights out. You know, we saw the Honey Badgers out for the year with the torn knee and everything. Shame for that. But that's a good team. We'll see what happens. Don't they play Frisco at the end of the year? Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah.
I tell you what, don't seem like Philadelphia found them a quarterback. I tell you what, that makes a big difference on that team.
I agree.
Yes, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Yeah.
He's having a great season.
That's crazy numbers.
Yes.
That's really good.
Michael Vick, get a pen and a paper. Get the board, baby. There's nothing wrong with that. You still get paid. Get the board.
I'll tell you what, Peyton Manning can play in the cold. He looks like a young buck out there.
You know what you and Peyton Manning have in common? You both look young today.
Ricky, you know what gets my attention about that more than anything else? All this criticism about, oh, this guy can't play in the cold. Who can play in the cold? I mean seriously, as a quarterback.
There you go, the top 3 greatest quarterback ever, and people trying to question Peyton.
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. There we go.
All right, we'll take a time out here when we return in just a moment. As always, our fun time, our hot seat segment as sportsNOLAtv continues from Don Seafood in Metairie on WHNO. sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. Sunday night's win marked the 2nd time in franchise history the Saints have ended an opponent's 8-game winning streak at home. Who was the other team to come to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome with an 8-game winning streak and leave with a loss, Brian?
Atlanta.
Right you are! A year ago,
We told
the
you.
Falcons.
These guys gave it all
And
up.
Chris Ivory made the run of the century. And the Saints beat the Falcons 31-27. Ivory made another really good run, by the way, a touchdown run for the Jets in their win over Oakland. So he's not too bad. He can play, but we knew that. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Don Seafood in Metairie, and we're so glad that you've taken time to join us. It's time now for our Hot Seat segment, and our Hot Seat segment is presented by Pride Services AC and Heating. Pride Services handles all your AC and heating needs. Since 1984, Pride Services skilled technicians have serviced and repaired all brands and models. They never charge for on-site estimates and pride themselves on fast, reliable service. Get out of the hot seat and call Pride Services Pride Services will fix it right today, be here tomorrow since 1984. And our hot seat topic today is really simple. Which is the best bowl game matchup in college football of the postseason? Brian Alley Walsh, it's time to go bowling.
Thank you, Dr. Trey, and as always, I'm going to take the chalk. I'm going to go to the BCS National Championship game, Auburn against Florida State. And we have talked on this day for the last 4 or 5 weeks probably. In my opinion, Auburn is just a destined team. And the cards have played out to where now they're playing for a national championship. Florida State deserves to be there. They're unbeaten. They've probably got the Heisman Trophy winner under center in famous Jameis Winston. It promises to be a compelling game. You've got Auburn that runs the heck out of the ball with Nick Marshall and Trey Mason, and you've got a really good run defense by the Seminoles. So we'll see what happens, but I'm glad. I think these are the two best teams playing for the national championship. It's a good way to end the BCS rankings, and may the best team win.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't I call him?
You might have.
Then when we had to make our decision, I did say Auburn and Florida State.
I agree.
Now, does that make a great game? I don't know. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I did pick those two to be playing against each other. But I'm going to take it down south, as we say, to the bottom. Down in Florida, I'm going to take the Orange Bowl. I think it's going to be a great game, Ohio State and Clemson. You're talking about two athletic quarterbacks in Taj Boyd and Miller going at one another. A lot of weapons on the outside. Both of them have great running back. And Urban Myers, man, I know he's glad to be back in the BCS once again. Not playing for the national championship. I know these guys want to come out and try to prove a point. And I know Clemson has always just been right there, just haven't been able to get over that hump. I think they'll come out excited about this game as well. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be some points put up. I also think it's going to be electrified. That boy Watson down there with Clemson, oh man, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism. Defense, I don't think it's going to be much defense in this game, but I do think it's going to be some fireworks.
My thing is, I'm going to go down way low to the little boys. I'm going to stick with the New Orleans Bowl. I'm going to go with Tulane, man, and Louisiana Lafayette. I want to see those two teams and see what happens. I want to see Tulane match the speed and stuff of Louisiana Lafayette. I think that Tulane ready for them.
That's a good pick. I like that he's staying home with Tulane. We're pulling for Tulane and all, but I think you're going to beat your match this weekend.
I hope that's a really good game, and I hope people come out in droves for that game.
I'll be there.
Good. I bet, I'll be there.
Oh, yes. I'll be there with a couple kids.
The Chick-fil-A game, A&M and Duke. It will be Johnny Manziel's last game as a collegiate. And you watch. He's going to try and break every record known to mankind, and it should be a dandy. It's going to be all offense. So I think, David Cutcliffe getting that Duke up there with a 10-win season.
I don't think he had that kind of coach, though. I think if they get the game on, coach will see what his quarterback next year can do.
Yeah.
I mean, if he have any idea that he's going or indicate that he's going to leave, I think the third, fourth quarter, he'll let the other quarterback play.
Why not? Give another guy opportunity. If this guy's playing and on leaving you, we definitely wanted to see what else is going to be coming up. We want to show our fans there they traveled a good little ways to come see us play, and we just want to give them a little sneak peek on what's to come in the future. Right. But again, I just think the Orange Bowl, man, if you want to see some fireworks, go down south. Florida, down to the bottom, as we call it. Rick, you know about that. You know about that way. You know about those oranges and all that good stuff.
Order on the set, order in the court, order at Don's. Let's restore some order here. There are some compelling bowl matchups. In the final analysis, do any of them really matter other than the national championship game? Until we get this mini playoff system, probably not. That said, it's all about a rooting interest, and it's all about what kind of matchups you have that make the game. In terms of an intriguing matchup, I'm going to stay in Louisiana too, like Ricky. But I'm going to North Louisiana, to Shreveport, to the Advocare V100 Bowl at Independence Stadium in Shreveport for an intriguing matchup between the Arizona Wildcats and Boston College's Eagles. You're talking about two offenses that are prolific. You're talking about two of the biggest statistic grabbers in the country. You're talking about legitimate Heisman Trophy candidates. You're talking about ingenuity on offense. You're talking about, if the weather holds out, a lot of points being scored and a very entertaining game between two teams that really are never going to play otherwise. I think Shreveport really did a great job of putting this game together and coming up with one that should be very interesting, perhaps as interesting as any you're going to find otherwise. And oh, by the way, though it might not be a close matchup in terms of what the experts think, the All-State Sugar Bowl has as good a marquee matchup as you'll ever have other than a national championship game. When you have Alabama, which claims 15 national championships, and Oklahoma, which claims 7, two of the storied programs in the history of college football in the United States coming together. Think Bud Wilkinson, think Bear Bryant, think Big Red, think Crimson Tide, think Boomer Sooner, think Bob Stoops, who thinks the SEC gets too much attention and is overrated. You think Alabama hasn't listened to those comments? You think they won't be pointed out to them along the way? You think Alabama's going to be ready to play since they are the best team in the country but blew it against Auburn? I suspect this time around in New Orleans, they'll be ready to play, unlike when they made that trip here to play Utah, and they're about to show Bob Stoops what the SEC is all about. We'll take a time out here. Speaking of the SEC, we'll look at LSU's bowl prospects, Tulane as well, and high school football as Sports NOLA TV continues from Dodge Seafood. And sportsNOLA.com is the place you need to be for following all the bowl game coverage, pre and post, all the high school coverage of state championships, pre and post, and of course, always on the Saints and the Pelicans and every other sports entity you can imagine at sportsNOLA.com, 24/7 Louisiana sports best site on the web, and read Brian's stuff on a weekly basis as well. And of course, this leads us to our own area teams and what they're doing in the postseason. The LSU Tigers found out Sunday evening that they'll be going to Tampa, Florida, to Raymond James Stadium to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Outback Bowl. LSU's first appearance in Tampa since 1989 when Syracuse beat them. And then you might remember the end of the 2004 season of the Capital One Bowl, also in the state of Florida. Iowa scores in the last seconds to beat LSU 30-25. That was Nick Saban's swan song at LSU, his final game at LSU. Okay, Brian, this is not one of the marquee matchups or sexier matchups, if you will, but it has the potential to be a good game.
Yeah, I think, what makes this intriguing for me and probably others as well is that we're going to see the freshman quarterback, Anthony Jennings, under center, and he's going to be in a run for that job with Brandon Harris when Harris joins him in January out of Parkway High School. But it's piqued my interest, but only that, Kenny.
Yeah, I think LSU is better than Iowa, Torrance. It's all about whether Jennings plays well or not. We haven't seen him for any extended period of time.
Yes, and hopefully, he's surrounded. He doesn't have to go out there and do it himself. He's surrounded with a lot of talent. Use that talent around you. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Go out there and have fun. Hey, you're going down there to my hometown. Everybody go down, support LSU. Great town. The town is growing, a lot to do, a lot of fun you're going to have other than the game. So go down to Tampa, enjoy in great weather, I guarantee you.
Ricky, it's SEC, it's Big Ten. Is this an easy call?
Well, I mean, it's a toss to me, a toss-up, because, I mean, those Big Ten teams, they're going to come in and fight. And LSU without their quarterback, I don't know how much they're going to struggle. So it should be a close game.
Kenny,
Okay.
The thing that I also dealing with Jennings is it'll be interesting to see what kind of package they do for Jennings, how they use this month to prepare him. I'm anxious to see how Cam Cameron gets him ready.
I really think that bowl games in general, certainly those that don't have anything to do with the national championship, are all about motivation. They're all about who wants to play, all about who has the desire to win, rather than just going for the trip, having fun. Do you really want to play? How motivated were you? I didn't think LSU was very motivated last year in Atlanta at all. I thought they were a better team than Clemson, and they really didn't show up. They still almost won the game despite doing very little offensively. I think this LSU team does have something to prove. They have a lot of young players that will be back, and a quarterback that basically will be auditioning to take that job on a permanent basis and fend off Brandon Harris before he even gets there. So I think LSU will be motivated. I think they're better, and I think even with their backup quarterback, they're the team to beat in this particular game. As for Tulane, as we alluded to earlier, they stay home to play in the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl on December 21st, 8 p.m. in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome against the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana Lafayette. This is the first time two teams from Louisiana, Brian, have been matched in a bowl game ever. And the record of over 48,000 you said last year is in danger of falling here, and it's a great chance for Tulane fans and those that used to be Tulane fans to reconnect with this program.
Absolutely, and while we have a moment, congratulations to Tulane getting Curtis Johnson under an extension. He's going to be making more than $1 million a year now, and those are the kind of resources that Tulane and Curtis needs to keep it going.
And that's really going to help him recruit, Torrance. He's already doing a good job in that regard.
Yes, being in this bowl is going to help him recruit. Definitely to some of the locals. We have a lot of talent down here in this pool, just right here in Orleans and Jefferson Parish. We have a lot, and hopefully he can keep these kids here where we'll get more support out there to the games.
Cajuns have a good offense, Ricky. The Tulane has a good defense. It's a pretty good
and
matchup.
I tell you what, man, it's more for the recruiting. That's what I like about the whole thing. But I mean, I like to give a shout out to the kicker from the Denver Broncos.
Yes.
That record's still a long time.
Great,
They broke the record.
Yes.
So we can't leave without giving them a shout out. And Cornelius Edinburgh, a friend of mine who passed away, 95 years old last night. He's been with me since I got to New Orleans. I take my hat off to him.
Blessings to him,
Yes.
and Godspeed to my friend and our friend Tom Dempsey. Tom he's still with us, and we love him, and we wish Tom nothing but success, and the same thing to Carlene and the family. That record stood the test of time, 43 years. Woo. And with all due respect, it took altitude to break the record. We all knew it would be Denver. Twice the record was tied in Denver previously, and once in San Francisco by Akers, and Denver twice previously by Elam and Janikowski. So it was only fitting that it would fall in Denver, and it did. But any record is made to be broken. When you hold a record for 43 years, Brian, that's very significant.
Absolutely, and Kenny, your column, I thought, on the website, sportsNOLA.com, captured it perfectly. You know, when you think about 43 years and all of the kicks that have come and gone in those years, and his has stood, as Kenny said, the test of time.
All right, let's take a look now at prep football, because this is the biggest week of the year for high school football in Louisiana. And as we get to the state championship games, let's first tell you about our player of the week for sportsNOLA.com, for WHNO television, WGSO 990 AM. He is quarterback Eugene Wells of the East Jefferson Warriors. Wells, 17 carries, 128 yards. He had a 2-point conversion. Also completed a touchdown pass for 7 yards. Returned 2 kicks for 86 yards. And East Jefferson shocked top-seeded Neville in a great football game, 18-15, field goal last play of the game, to go to 14-0 and go to the state championship for the first time in school history to take on Edna Carr, 4 o'clock in the Superdome Saturday afternoon. And what a tremendous accomplishment by East Jefferson, Torrance.
Oh, yes. I can't recall the coach's name. Can you help me
Nick
out?
Salteramaggio.
Yes. He had opportunity to be with us at the quarterback club. And we talked about him. Every time he comes to the quarterback club, he was losing. But hey, undefeated season.
He's got it. Here are the matchups. Local teams, Archbishop Hannon, Calvary Baptist Thursday at 12:30. And then at 4:30, it's University High, unbeaten against John Curtis. And then at Division I at 8:30, the Rommel Raiders and the Bird Yellow Jackets for the championship in Division I. And then you go to Friday in 1A, it's Mangum and Haynesville, Northern Powers. And then in 2A, Kinder and Manny at 4:30. And then 3A, Union Parish and Livonia playing at 8:30. And then the Classic wraps up on Saturday. Vermilion Catholic unbeaten against St. Frederick, their first trip to the Dome. East Jefferson and Edna Carr, the big Titan matchup of local teams for the 4A title. And then it concludes with a great matchup between Cass Happy Parkway with an incredible offense and Run Happy Acadiana with that vaunted veer. Some very good matchups. 9 games, it's a lot, but Brian, you want to get to as many as you can.
Well, we wish all the local teams, particularly in like East Jefferson, it's just so good when you get Rummel wins their first state championship last year, and now East Jefferson's going for its first as well. So congratulations, and it should be a great 3 days of football.
And a chance for Rummel and Curtis to repeat.
Well, I
Ricky?
mean, yeah, you see Curtis always up there, man. And I mean, just to see, I go out there and ride by and see those kids starting from a young age all the way up. I mean, you take your hat off to them. You know that they're working hard.
And you know some of those Rummel kids, too.
Yeah, I mean, I know I coach a lot of them basketball, man. And I just, love to see them guys, man. Dwayne, them, I mean, I like to see them guys play.
All right, we'll take a time out here. We'll return in just a moment to take a look at the Saints' future, among other things, as we continue from Don Seafood in Metairie on WHNO Channel 20. It's seafood the old-fashioned way in the newly renovated Don Seafood Restaurant, 4801 Veterans in Metairie, 889-1550, the number to call. 80 years of tradition and taste. Mama's Gumbo, delicious spoiled seafood, fresh fish specials, jacked up shrimp, charbroiled oysters. It's Don Seafood. It doesn't get any better. And we're thrilled to be here at Don's and enjoying the outstanding fare that Don's offer. Prep Recruiting Insider, Wednesday at 6 p.m. And they'll preview all 9 state championship games. Renee Nato, Ro Brown, Wednesday at 6 with PRI. The John Forcade Show with Mike Detillier, Thursday from Ray Brandt on the West Bank at 6 p.m. Getting you ready for the Saints weekend against St. Louis in expert fashion. The John Forcade Show. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv. The Saints and the Rams coming up on Sunday. Late game in St. Louis, late afternoon game. And Brian, the last time the Saints went to St. Louis, they got popped by a winless Rams team in 2010.
Absolutely. 0-6 Rams hosted the 5-2 Saints back on October the 30th, 2011, and it was a 31-21 game, Kenny, but it wasn't that close, if you remember. Breeze threw a late touchdown pass to make it that 10-point game. They better be careful. I don't think they're going to go there and lose, but they better be careful. This could be an ambush.
Yeah, professional game. It's just the NFL. You have to go and show up every game, not just certain teams get you up. NFL, you should get up every game.
Well, I mean, the Rams got a good little scrappy team, but I don't think they're no match for the Saints.
I think the Saints understand the magnitude of the situation. I don't think they're going to slip up. I think they'll show up and play, and if they show up and play, they'll win. But it's never easy in the NFL. Don't have to worry about weather. It's indoors in the Gateway City. Ricky, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Merry Christmas
Always,
to you,
man.
buddy.
Merry Christmas
Brian,
to
you,
Merry Christmas, my friend.
Merry Christmas.
You as
All
well.
right, G.
It's a beautiful thing. For all 3 of these gentlemen, for our outstanding crew as well, and for our friends at Don Seafood. And this is Ken Trahan saying thanks for joining us. Be a good sport. God bless you one and all. We are rounding third and heading home. So long.